Hello guys, welcome back to Learning Solidity. So in this video, we'll talk about calling contract function from another contract. So there are three ways you can do this using the typecasting method or using the call or delegate call method. So in this video, we'll focus on the typecasting. For this, we'll need two contracts. So I'll create a contract. This should be contract A. And I'll create a second contract, which should be contract B. Okay, contract B will call contract A functions. To do that, let's just declare some functions here. Okay, so we have a function in contract A. We'll call this function from contract B. To do that, we'll create a function in contract B. So we want to call contract A method. To do that, we need the address of this contract A. And to get the address of contract A, we can, in this call increment, we can set a parameter for the address of contract A. So we can call an address, call this contract. Okay, in here we have to typecast this address to be a contract type. So to do that, we'll declare the data type, which should be A, which is the contract, and we'll give this a name. Let's call this A. Let's call this A contract, and it should initialize to A. In this parentheses, we'll pass in the address to this contract, and which is what we are getting from here. So we should just do this contract. Now we've initialized this, we can start calling this contract method using this contract variable. So that we'll just access the variable. Then using the dot notation, we can call any function contract A has. So we can call the increment, and we just pass in a variable. Let's just pass in, let's just pass in 12 in here. And then let's run this. Go to the deploy tab. Let's run this. We have contract A and contract B. We'll deploy contract A and we'll deploy contract B. If you check contract A, the value, if you check contract A variable, the value is 0, which is the default, as we did not initialize or anything. So once we call this call increment method, you should trigger this contract, which will call this, and it will change the variable over here. So to say that, we need the address of the contract we're trying to interact with. So we can copy the address here, and once we pass it here, we can call this function. If you check this again, the value has increased. So that's how you call a contract function from another contract. But what if this function is payable? What if we have a payable function, which means this function accepts payments? So we'll create, let's require so we are requiring that the user must send any amount of ether to be able to call this function. Let's create a function that calls the payable. It also accept the address of the contract we are trying to call. We'll make this public, we'll make this payable. Okay, and we initialize this. And using this, we can access the set X. This should be set A. And it should be set A. Okay, we get the set A, and we pass in the value. Let's call this 12. So if we should try running this script now, just to show you guys what will happen, I've deleted the deployed contract. We'll deploy this contract again and deploy contract B. If we go over to contract B, if we try calling, let's copy the contract address of contract A. Once we paste it in here, if we try calling this, we should get an error, because this require method here is reverting the contract because we need to send the value. So let's try sending the value. Once we send the value, okay, let's say we send 1 ether, and we try calling this contract B again. As you can see, we also get an error. This is because once we send an ether, it's going to the contract B. So once you go to the contract B is just calling this function it's not passing this value to it. So how do we specify a value to this? To do that, after calling the function name, using the dot notation, we can add dot value, and in this value they just pass in whatever the user sends to this contract, and then finally the parameter. If a user sends a value to this contract, we are sending it straight to this function. So this function now will have a message of value that is not 0. Now let's try deploying this contract again. I'll leave contract A because there's nothing changed there. So I'll delete contract B and deploy contract B. Okay, so now if we should, let's call this one enter. And if we should copy the contract address, paste in here, and click on call set A, the transaction was successful, it went. And if we check the A variable, we should see 12. So this is a way to pass in value to call another contract function that is payable, and also passing the value to it. To call a contract function, you just need the function signature, which is why we have this contract here. But what if this contract is already been deployed and you need to call some functions? It wouldn't be ideal to copy the whole contract code to put here. You just need to specify the functions you want to call. This is where you can use interfaces. So we can create an interface here. Let's call this a interface. And in this a interface, we can just specify the functions we are willing to call. So let's just specify this function here, and we'll not initialize this function, it should just be this, and we'll declare this as external. So once we have this interface, then we can specify just the functions we are willing to call from the contract A. And here we can, instead of initializing with the A, we can initialize with the interface. Yeah, so once we try calling this increment method, because the increment method was not specified in this interface, it can't find it. It needs the signature of this increment method. So we should copy this also. Okay, now you see the code also runs well. If you have a contract that is too huge for you to put into your own contract when creating, you can just create an interface, specify the functions you're willing to call, and then in your main contract you can call those functions using the interface. So this is a video on how to call contract functions from another contract, and also how to pass in the value to the contract. So do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you have any other question, feel free to ask in the comment section below. Also, in the next video, we'll talk about the call method, using the call method to call contract functions. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.